Inclusion Films welcomes you to a special edition of Critics Corner, a tribute to writer-director Francis Ford Coppola. I'm Bree.
I'm Will.
I'm Shaylin. Welcome to Critics Corner.
One of America's most erratic, energetic, and controversial filmmakers, Francis Ford Coppola enjoyed stunning triumphs and endured monumental setbacks before resurrecting himself, phoenix-like, to begin the process all over again. Known primarily for his successful Godfather trilogy, The Godfather Part 2, and The Godfather Part 3, Coppola was the most celebrated of the Young Turks, a group of filmmakers who emerged in the early 1970s that included George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese, Brian De Palma, and William Friedkin.
Unbridled by his ambition and enthusiasm and perhaps obsession to the point of being manic, Coppola infused a fervent creative energy into his early work, culminating in Apocalypse Now, 1979, a journey into his own heart of darkness that irrevocably altered his career and may have even caused permanent psychological damage.
Born on April 7, 1939, in Detroit, Michigan, Coppola was raised in a creative, supportive Italian-American family. His paternal grandparents came to the United States from Bernalda, Basilicata. Francis is the second of three children. His older brother, August Coppola, father to actor Nicolas Cage, and his younger sister, Talia Shire, mother to actor Jason Schwartzman.
Coppola received his middle name in honor of Henry Ford because of his musician father's association with the automobile manufacturer. Carmine was a flautist, as well as arranger and assistant orchestra director for the Ford Sunday Evening Hour, an hour-long music radio concert. Carmine also played in several other orchestras, including Toscanini's NBC Symphony Orchestra, which he often conducted when on tour, while Coppola's mother, Italia, was a professional actress.
Because of Carmine's tenure with Toscanini, Coppola moved to New York with his family when he was 2 and spent the remainder of his childhood in Queens. When he was 9 years old, Coppola suffered from polio, which kept him confined to his bed for a year with his left arm and leg paralyzed.
Separated from his friends, Francis occupied himself with puppets and mechanical devices, which intensified an already developing fascination with film. At age 10, he began making movies with his father's 8mm camera and tape recorder. After graduating Great Neck High School, he pursued a bachelor's degree in drama at Hofstra University, alongside actors James Caan and Lainie Kazan. He would later cast Caan in The Rain People and The Godfather.
Once he wrapped his student career at Hofstra, Coppola attended UCLA, where he brushed elbows with future Doors singer Jim Morrison. He also earned his Master's of Fine Arts in Film Direction from the UCLA Film School. He was profoundly impressed after seeing Sergei Eisenstein's October, 10 Days That Shook the World, especially with the movie's quality of editing. It was at this time that Coppola decided he would go into cinema rather than theater. Francis also gives credit to work of director Elia Kazan for directing A Streetcar Named Desire, On the Waterfront, and East of Eden, for its influence on him as a director. In the 1960s, Coppola gained some real-world experience directing softcore porn films like Tonight for Sure in 1962. And then he hired himself out to low-budget king Roger Corman. He directed his first feature, the unremarkable Corman-produced Dementia 13 in 1963.
Then, on the strength of his Samuel Goldwyn award-winning UCLA screenplay, Pilma Pilma, Coppola secured a job as a scriptwriter with 7 Arts. Coppola made significant contributions to films like Is Paris Burning and This Property is Condemned, and became frustrated with not seeing his vision on the big screen. Coppola bought the rights to a David Benedictus novel and fused it with a story idea of his own, resulting in You're a Big Boy Now, his UCLA thesis project that also received a theatrical release. Unfortunately, the film failed at the box office.
In 1970, Coppola got a big break and won an Oscar for Best Original Screenplay, co-written with Edmund H. North for the film Patton. He has stated, "When I wrote the script, it was very controversial because they thought it was so stylized. I was sort of interested in the reincarnation of Patton, and I had this bizarre opening where Patton stands up in front of an American flag and gives this speech. Ultimately, I wasn't fired, but I was fired, meaning that when the script was done, they said, okay, thank you very much, and they went on and hired another writer, and that script was forgotten." Coppola remembers very vividly this long kind of being raked over the coals response to this opening scene. Even after director Franklin J. Schaffner was persuaded to keep the scene intact, George C. Scott refused to do it, as he believed it would overshadow the rest of his performance. Schaffner lied and assured Scott that it would be shown at the end. Over the years, this opening monologue has become an iconic scene and has spawned parodies in numerous films, political cartoons, and television shows.
30 years from now, when you're sitting around your fireside with your grandson on your knee, and he asks you, what did you do in the Great World War II? You won't have to say, well, I shoveled shit in Louisiana.
With The Godfather, however, everything changed. Coppola was not Paramount's first choice to direct the film. Italian director Sergio Leone was initially offered the job, but declined in order to direct his own gangster opus, Once Upon a Time in America. Peter Bogdanovich was also approached, but declined the offer and made What's Up, Doc instead. Coppola did not initially want to direct the film because he feared it would glorify the mafia and violence, and thus reflect poorly on his Sicilian and Italian heritage. According to Robert Evans, head of Paramount Pictures at the time, he specifically wanted an Italian-American to direct the film because his research had shown that previous films about the mafia that were directed by non-Italians had fared dismally at the box office. And he wanted to, in Evans' own words, smell the spaghetti.
Thanks to the ever-faithful producer Bob Evans and a timely Oscar for Patton, Coppola survived to bring his monumental epic to the screen, earning his second Oscar for the screenplay he co-wrote with Mario Puzo, author of the best-selling novel the film was based on. One of the highest-grossing films in cinema history, The Godfather captured the country's imagination by skirting the traditional gangster territory and reinventing itself, both as a family chronicle and a lyrical epic of Shakespearean proportions. Capturing the transition of leadership inside a New York mafia family after its patriarch, Don Vito Corleone, has been shot, Coppola used his manic creative energy to pull out all the stops in directing what many consider to be the greatest film of all time.
Aside from the stunning visual feast, from the opening wedding scene contrasted by the interior of the Don holding court to the final bloody montage of murder seen against the backdrop of baptism, The Godfather was elevated beyond the mere pulp of his paperback origins into the realm of true art. Meanwhile, the film helped resurrect Brando's career while introducing audiences to James Caan, Al Pacino, Robert Duvall, Coppola's sister, Talia Shire, and a young Diane Keaton. On top of earning an Oscar for Best Picture, The Godfather helped usher in an era of what is now known as the blockbuster movie, making Coppola a wealthy man and propelling forward his stagnating career. Coppola's Godfather success did almost as much for his filmmaking friends as it did for the generous director himself. In 1973, he launched George Lucas's career by producing the early 1960s nostalgia flick, American Graffiti.
1974 was a very busy year for Coppola. He wrote the screenplay for The Great Gatsby, where a Midwesterner becomes fascinated with his nouveau riche neighbor, Robert Redford, who obsesses over his lost love.
Coppola again co-wrote with Puzo. In The Godfather Part 2, he daringly intercut the story of the rise to power of Vito Corleone. When Coppola shot The Godfather Part 2, it was the last major American motion picture to be filmed in Technicolor. George Lucas commented on the film after its 5-hour-long preview, telling Coppola, "You have two films. Take one away. It doesn't work," referring to the movie's portrayal of two parallel storylines, one of a young Vito Corleone and the other of his son, Michael. In the director's commentary on the DVD edition of the film, Coppola states that this film was the first major motion picture to use Part 2 in its title, a name that Paramount was initially opposed to using.
According to Coppola, the studio's objection stemmed from the belief that audiences would be reluctant to see a film with such a title, as the audience would supposedly believe that, having already seen The Godfather, there was little reason to see an addition to the original film.
The winner is Francis Ford Coppola for The Godfather Part 2.
However, the success of The Godfather Part 2 began the Hollywood tradition of numbered sequels. It was nominated for 11 Academy Awards and received 6 of them, including 3 for Coppola: Best Picture, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Director.
It wouldn't be until 1979 that Coppola would have another major film, Apocalypse Now.
The production of the film was plagued by numerous problems. Disappointed with the dailies, Coppola replaced original leading actor Harvey Keitel with Martin Sheen, who not long after suffered a heart attack that delayed production. Also, extras from the Philippine military and half of the supplied helicopters would leave in the middle of the scenes to go fight hostile rebels. And if that wasn't enough, Mother Nature herself even entered the act with Typhoon Olga. The film was delayed so often it was nicknamed Apocalypse When.
Meanwhile, Coppola's personal journey into his own heart of darkness mirrored the story he was filming. The cost overrun was staggering, forcing Coppola to mortgage everything he owned to cover some $16 million of the $30 million budget.
After many months of difficult jungle shooting and strenuous editing, the long-awaited production enjoyed an emotional premiere at the Cannes Film Festival, where it won the Palme d'Or. Parts of the movie, like the helicopters attacking to the bombast of Richard Wagner's The Ride of the Valkyries, was sheer genius. Apocalypse Now marked the end of Coppola's golden period.
What followed in the new decade was a succession of box office disappointments. He would spend the decade working to pay off his debts. The 80s brought a string of box office failures. The Outsiders and Rumblefish both lost money. Nevertheless, they provided screen introductions, including Tom Cruise, Matt Dillon, Mickey Rourke, Nicolas Cage, Patrick Swayze, C. Thomas Howell, Ralph Macchio, Emilio Estevez, Christopher Penn, and Diane Lane.
Meanwhile, along with producer George Lucas, he was able to indulge himself by making Captain EO, a 12-minute space fantasy for Disney theme parks, starring pop superstar Michael Jackson.
While Coppola was working in Rome, the opportunity arose to direct The Godfather Part 3. In desperate need of a hit, Coppola acceded to Paramount chairman Frank Mancuso's pleas for a third installment in the series. Coppola's decision to cast daughter Sophia as Mary Corleone in the film after Winona Ryder withdrew due to illness backfired miserably, turning Sophia's role into an industry laughingstock.
His daughter's failure to capture the part was widely cited as one of the film's worst flaws, leading to cries of nepotism. Studio pressure to meet a December release terminated the editing process prematurely, leaving essentially an unfinished product.
Dad?
A revised Godfather Part 3 was later made available in the DVD version.
Though it remained nowhere as near as good as the first two Godfathers, the cut was far superior to the original theatrical release thanks to the incomparable Walter Murch's additional editing.
It was still a box office success, earning a revenue of $136 million against a budget of $54 million. The Godfather Part 3 went on to gather 7 Academy Award nominations.
Coppola paid $10 million in 1995 to purchase the balance of the old Inglenook wine-producing property, completing his dream estate and expanding his wine company, Niebaum Coppola.
It would be his growing wine business, in fact, that would keep the Coppola name alive, as his 90s film offerings were mostly forgettable, with Coppola more or less a director for hire. He did, however, score a huge success at the helm of Bram Stoker's Dracula, with the help of a stunning production design by Thomas Sanders, superb cinematography by Michael Ballhaus, and chilling music. A sumptuous visual extravaganza that more than compensated for lapses in the story. The film grossed $200 million worldwide and carried home Oscars for makeup, sound effects, editing, and costume design. His 9-year-old granddaughter, Gia Coppola, requests to her grandfather that he make something for kids, influenced Francis's next directorial choice. Jack, starring Robin Williams as a 10-year-old child with a disorder that caused him to grow 4 times faster than normal and to have the appearance of a 40-year-old man. The premise of Jack's diminished life expectancy appealed to Coppola in that it paralleled to his son, Giancarlo's tragically short but full life.
He picked a proven winner as his next project, scripting and helming the film adaptation of John Gresham's The Rainmaker in 1997. One of the best Gresham adaptations, but one that still lacked the fire and inspiration of Coppola's finer works. After The Rainmaker, Coppola took nearly a decade off from filmmaking.
With Francis's 10-year layoff, the Coppola film name was kept alive with the 2003 emergence of Francis's daughter, Sofia Coppola, as a writer and director.
Sofia Coppola for Lost in Translation.
And became the 3rd woman and first American woman to be nominated for an Academy Award for Best Director. In 2010, with Somewhere, she became the first American woman and 4th American filmmaker to win the Golden Lion, the top prize at the Venice Film Festival.
Thank you to the Academy for giving me this honor. Thank you to my dad for everything he taught me. Thank you to my brother Roman and all my friends who were there for me when I was stuck at 12 pages and encouraged me to keep writing.
In 2007, Francis Ford Coppola returned to his directing after a 10-year hiatus with Youth Without Youth, a low-budget, self-financed project adapted from the novella by Romanian author Mircea Eliade.
In 2009, Coppola then helmed Tetro, a cross between Ingmar Bergman, Federico Fellini type of film. Tetro, a drama centered on an artistic immigrant family in Buenos Aires. Tetro was Francis Ford Coppola's first original screenplay since The Conversation. It is his most personal film yet, arising from memories and emotions from his early life, though totally fictional.
In 2011, Coppola wrote, directed, and produced thriller Twixt. A writer with a declining career arrives in a small town as part of his book tour and gets caught up in a murder mystery involving a young girl. That night, in a dream, he is approached by a mysterious young ghost named V. He's unsure of her connection to the murder in town, but is grateful for the story being handed to him. Ultimately, he is led to the truth of the story, surprised to find that the ending has more to do with his own life than he could ever have anticipated.
Coppola's dynamic journey in the world of cinema has led him down a new path. Perhaps his inability to match the successes he experienced in the 70s has caused interest in his own roots to manifest. His current project, Untitled, is a 3-part saga which is focused on his Italian heritage.
It's not a matter of asking someone to let you make a movie. It's to announce that you're making it. I mean, Lorraine people, Warner Brothers didn't want me to make them. I mean, they couldn't care less about this movie. I merely went into them one day and I said, it's Friday, Tuesday we're flying to New York and we're going to shoot some film for my new movie. I said, what's it about? What's the story? You know, we got to approve it. I said, well, if you don't want to make it, I'll pay for it myself, you know. And I walked out. Now, they didn't know what to do because they didn't, maybe it was a good thing, you know.